We're here with Rodney Raines at Ace Custom Tattoo, and fuck him because this is gonna hurt. So that's my intro, and then you carry on, Jay.
That's a good one. Well, yeah. So
thanks for having. Rodney?
Thanks for
works for me.
Thanks for letting us do this here, Rodney, today,
and
hosting. Man, we're excited to be here and to chat with you and to have the opportunity to be tattooed by you. So we talked a little bit about the history of this shop and your history beforehand, but maybe if you don't mind, like give us you're like Charlotte legend,
not just Charlotte,
and not just Charlotte. I mean, but this is where we are and beyond. But talk to us about how you got into tattooing.
First, the earth cooled, and then the dinosaurs came. No. So I lived down in South Carolina. That's where I'm from. And down there it was illegal to tattoo in the 90s. My sister had been dating a guy that had been apprenticing. This was in 90 probably 2 or 3 he started apprenticing to tattoo. I graduated college in 95. When I graduated, my girlfriend at the time got in touch with him and said, hey, I want to get a tattoo machine for Rodney for his graduation. So, under any normal circumstances, nobody would have been allowed in the community like that. It was not a standard process to just hand out equipment. It was very hard to come by at the time. Aside from ordering it off the back of a biker magazine or a porno magazine or something like that, you kind of shut out of luck. There was no Amazon, internet, nothing like that existed yet, so people weren't able to just get whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it. So because I was no threat to anyone in the community from my friends in Atlanta, I wasn't going to come and put them out of work. Also, they had faith that I wasn't going to give hepatitis to an entire trailer park, or, they knew that I had artist integrity of knowing what the hell I was doing with a pencil and could probably figure the rest of it out. Shay helped me to get some equipment, and when it came time to learn how to do it, I basically did so on my friends, fairly unguided, I guess you would say, other than being able to occasionally go down to Georgia, where my friends were that tattooed, which was a couple hours away. Go down and watch them for the afternoon or something, and generally they would not be busy, so we would sit around and laugh about shit and then go get drunk in the end of the evening. It's pretty good introduction into the world, really.
Yeah.
After about a year of working out of my house, just at late nights, all my friends, people that I played music with, actually were the first guy that I did a tattoo on was a guy that played drums in my band at the time. And
do you remember what the tattoo was?
Black Flag bars.
Oh yeah.
Timeless classic.
Yeah.
And so after about a year of that, I had some decent photos of stuff that I'd been doing, and I took it to a shop in Hendersonville that I'd found out about through the same guy that got the equipment for me. They needed some help. I drove up, showed the guy that was running the shop my stack of pictures. I didn't even have the sense to have a portfolio. I just had a stack of pictures, and I showed him what I had, and they needed somebody enough for him to go, all right, we're going to let you work this week. And if things look good, then maybe we'll put you on the schedule permanently.
So you just walked in with a stack of pictures, no tattoo history?
BDP. Just fucking walk in and do it.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah, it was just a right place, right time, right words from the right people to trust that I was worth talking to. And
right.
I mean, it was a starved time then. It was March of '97. and never looked back. After that week, you know, I made some money. I was working for my dad before that, digging swimming pools,
Yeah.
and I'd been tattooing in, you know, after hours for about a year. And I told him, I was like, hey, man, I got this chance to do this. And he knew that I wasn't supposed to be digging swimming pools my whole life, building dump trucks and whatever the hell else we were doing. So he accepted it as a matter of fact. And it's like, all right, yeah, well, good luck with it. Went and did it for a week. They offered me a job. Never looked back.
So at that point, is it basically like, because you're building a client base, essentially, you're just doing walk-ins until like word of mouth
Oh, total
kind of spreads?
Yeah. I mean, that's all there was at that time.
Right.
Like people didn't know what a custom tattoo was at that point. You
Right.
know, like customizing a tattoo was adding a name or,
Right.
you know, putting some different color in the eyes. Like nobody was used to people drawing things for them.
Okay.
It was like pick it off the wall and that's what you get.
Yeah.
And by, you know, and by that, that's what differentiated the shops. Like, oh, they got cooler designs at that shop because they, you know, the shop would be little more worldly or a little more old, you know, or maybe they drew their own designs and had their own designs on the wall that were something that you couldn't possibly get anywhere else because all the
Right,
originals
sure.
were on the wall there. But they were still going by flash designs, you know.
Okay.
It was years after the fact. So I worked there for 7 months, Gastonia for 2 years, and then I came to Ace.
Right.
So I came in and you know, that was in '99, May of '99,
And that was in the house up there.
and that was in
Yeah,
the house on
yeah.
1525 Central. That's now
Oh,
a
wow.
head shop. Interestingly enough, the spot that it was before that, it was a shop further down Central that I think is also a head shop.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I say head shop. That was an old term. Now it's a vape store.
Right.
Right,
They
right.
jump from place to place.
Yeah, less dream catchers,
Yeah.
less dreams caught, possibly
Yeah.
as well.
Dreams lost.
But popcorn lung is available if you want.
Yeah.
So you know, ups, some big ups there.
So when you started tattooing, so I always hear stories. Oh, I practice on an orange, or I bought pigskin, or I practice on my foot. Or did you do any of that
The
stuff?
very first thing I ever tattooed was a lemon.
So that does work. That's like the
It's
same.
a thing. It's a thing you can
okay.
tattoo. You know, I didn't have the patience to work on fruit and other vegetables and such
Sure.
for very long. I literally put the machine down for months. And my bandmates would harass me all the time, and there was this fun game of, hey Rodney, why don't you tattoo me? And inevitably I would end up, you know, declining and like, oh, I need something, I don't have this thing, I can't do it, you know, like
Right.
feign the excuse of needing some sort of sterile thing that I actually didn't need.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a deal breaker, but it was something to keep me out, you know, non-committal with the thing. One night we went to band practice. We always practiced on Tuesday. So one Tuesday night we went bowling after practice, and Josh, my drummer, is like, hey man, you should tattoo me tonight. And I just said, okay. And it was like, this is not how the game is played. You say no, we make fun of you for being being the weak leg here, and
Yeah.
and then we go continue bowling. But
Right.
I was like, yeah, let's do it, and that kind of threw everybody off, and we did. And so I did some black flag bars on that night,
Nice.
and they weren't great, but it didn't look like another band's logo.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's fucking by design. It's 4 fucking bars, right?
Yeah. It's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, getting the opportunity to come and work in Charlotte, you know, it was a big change in everything. Because I had walked away from music. For 4 years, I'd been away from music at this point.
Okay.
Or well, no, I take that back. For 2 years at that stage, I was still watching music all the time. I was like, you know, out in the scene and meeting people, and you know, we all have friends that talk about music a little more seriously than others, and we all have friends that have musical equipment that you never see play it,
Right.
but they talk a good game,
Oh,
you know.
yeah,
and
yeah.
I was that guy apparently, because nobody had ever seen me play here. And so, you know, the bass was sitting underneath a bed somewhere, and it was a couple of years before I made it into music. But I made it into music largely by being a part of the community and being around musicians. Like Colin played drums. He was at the time and playing with Daddy Blue with Leeser and Carrie and Dustin, and they were killing it. You know, like doing their gigs weekly.
Yeah.
And then he was doing Pigfucker, and he was in the Aqualads. So I was getting to see all those people and be around all that stuff, and it put me in to the fabric of that group of like, you know, that little incestuous group of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I started tattooing those people. Penguin took off, you know, in 2001, and that was a big factor in the change of like business for me.
Well, it was a true neighborhood scene. I mean, this whole neighborhood had its scene.
Yeah, it really was. It really was the ground that helped it all to happen. You know, Fat City was still going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Milestone really wasn't even that big a factor. Tremont, Casbah side and Fat City were more the ground efforts at the time.
I used to love
because Milestone
playing
hadn't
Casbah.
had its resurgence yet.
Right.
I mean, it was a factor, but not that big of a factor.
So you've been playing music already. When did you start? Was the bass that your
So
first instrument?
my grandfather was a musician.
Okay.
He played anything with strings on it, and he was impeccable. Down in South Carolina, his name was Pee Wee Melton. He used to record at Mark V Studios and kind of helped build that place in Greenville. He was a major contributor in the growth of it.
Mm-hmm.
So at a very young age, he gave me a ukulele and taught me 3 chords on it,
Mm-hmm.
and taught me 3 songs, and it was songs like "Jesus Loves You" or, you know, something that I was probably 7 or 8. I don't
Right.
even know exactly.
Yeah.
And I learned the songs and I learned the chords, and then he taught me a 4th chord.
Okay.
And it like required me to have my fingers all stretched out. All 4 fingers were on this thing. I was this tiny little kid. I mean, I'm a tiny adult. I was a fucking real tiny child.
Me too.
Yeah. So he gives me this ukulele, and I can't hit this 4th chord, and I'm like, Papa, this chord doesn't work. I need a new chord. And he's like, well, that's the chord. That's the one that's the next one. I'm like, yeah, but I don't like this one. This one hurts my fingers. He's like, but that's the one that you learn. Like, you just play it, and you learn it, and then you figure it out. And I was like, I've got Hot Wheels cars and Star Wars toys in a sandbox that are calling my name. Fuck you and your ukulele. Bye. And I walked away from it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, as a punk rock kid, you know, like, sitting what would later become guitar player and singer in the band that I was in, when we were sitting in his bedroom, and he had a Memphis Strat copy and a crate amp that had a distortion button on it.
Mm-hmm.
Little, you know, fucking 10-inch combo amp or 8-inch combo amp or something like that. And had Reignition on vinyl playing, Reignition by Bad Brains.
Mm-hmm.
And he picked up his guitar and started playing along with it, you know, just the bar chords. And those, like, I saw that and I was like, well, fuck, that's easy. I wasted a lot of years on this, you know.
Trying to stretch your fingers out.
By this time, my grandfather moved down to Florida, so he didn't live next door. And I'm like, man, I kind of want to learn to play guitar or something, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he had a guitar, so I got a Washburn that was like a nice bass, and never looked back. Like,
Nice.
I can play at guitar, I can play at other instruments, but nobody needs to see it.
Right.
You know, like, that's like building blocks. But
Did you ever go back to the ukulele?
I have a ukulele,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't really.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to see that either.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
But it's you know, it's kind of one of those nostalgia things of it exists, and again, building blocks.
Yep.
But yeah, music was just part of tattooing. You know, they all kind of coincided. A lot of the early tattoos that I saw, they weren't from seeing them in person. They were from seeing them on like album jackets and things like that. You know, bands on the TV, because I was in a state where it wasn't legal. So I wasn't able to walk into a shop and look at flash on the walls. I wasn't able to, like, if I saw somebody with a tattoo, they got it done in another state or they got it done in somebody's kitchen.
Right.
And it was probably bad either way.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
When did it become legal in South Carolina?
2004, the legislation passed, but it didn't have any shops open until 2006.
Wow.
Okay. And it was illegal in New York too for
New York, 97.
okay.
97 legal in the city. Like there were shops in the city, but they couldn't have a facade. So
Okay.
it was underground. Massachusetts was 2001 and Oklahoma was last. They were 2006. So now it's not illegal anywhere. Some places have no sanctions, and some places like the big change was in the 60s when the hep scare came through.
Okay.
People anchored down and decided that there either needed to be laws or not. And like South Carolina actually has a history of tattooing down on the coast because of all the military.
Right.
But
okay.
when it was made illegal, with us being in the Bible Belt and being kind of the buckle of the Bible Belt, they were just let's hold the fort on this. This is why we can't make it legal.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they just kept it illegal for a long time.
Okay.
There's still some counties like Fort Mill, like you can't, like Rock Hill, Fort Mill area. There's no shops down there,
I didn't know
or
that.
at least there weren't. They may have
Yeah.
changed it now, but so like Greenville, where I'm from, they really locked down with all these different restrictions on where. Like you couldn't be within 1,000 feet of a church.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't be within 1,000 feet of a school. You couldn't be within it was like a lot of really dumb rules.
Yeah.
Some of which got some pushback on them. You
Yeah.
couldn't get tattooed on your hands and out of your collar. You know, like just some morality,
Yeah.
virtue signaling horse shit.
Right.
Arbitrary.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you're either going to hell or you're not.
Right.
Just let me go to hell in style.
Yeah.
I'll look good while
Get
I'm
on the
there.
ride or
With
not.
or without the tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of tattoos, I'm gonna start.
Thank you. Can't wait. Love getting tattooed.
Shall we?
I'm ready.
It's time for your patience to be rewarded. All right, I'm trying not to hit this fucking microphone here.
So do you like getting tattooed?
I'm a terrible client at getting tattooed. I hate actually getting tattooed,
Yeah,
but
me
at the
too.
same time, there's something just imperative about it for me, and that I empathize with it. You know.
Yeah.
I got my last large space tattooed, the last large available space tattooed back in April. Finished up a piece of my ribs. I've got some space left, but it's minimal. I haven't come out of my collar yet,
Yeah.
really. Don't know if I will.
Where's your least favorite spot to get tattooed?
Gastonia.
No, on your body, Rodney. On your body.
It's my favorite answer.
Actually, my first tattoo was in Gastonia.
That's right. I was with you. I remember
Yeah.
that.
That's always been my go-to answer. Where's the most painful place to get tattooed? Gastonia.
It's like the newlywed game. Where's the strangest place you've had sex? And-
Made whoopee.
Yeah,
It was
or made whoopee in the butt. And you're like,
In the
what?
butt, Bob.
What?
Definitely in the butt.
We'll be back in 2 and 2.
For me, like sternum, ribs,
Yeah.
back was pretty damn gnarly.
Yeah, the sternum is called the Thunderdome for a reason. It's no good.
Yeah, it's rough. I don't recommend it to anybody that's not willing to take the ride.
Well, when I got mine done right here, Chris did it, and like all the guys in the shop kind of walked over and watched me get it, and I'm like, I gotta man up. I can't make any grimaces, or I almost jumped out of the seat. It was rough. It's no fun.
So, how does the hand now compare to the sternum?
Oh, no, nothing.
No, that's
Nothing.
like apples and oranges.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not
I
even
could
apples
take-
and oranges. That's
I-
like
I could take a nap right now
Yeah.
if I needed to, but
Yeah.
yeah, like right here,
Mm-hmm.
it was fucking like insane.
Yeah.
I thought I was high. Like I thought I was on mushrooms. I didn't know what was going on.
Really?
Yeah, I was like
Just the
almost
endorphin.
hallucinating.
Yeah.
And everyone was watching me. But luckily this was during like the pandemic, so I had a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't see the facial expressions I was making, which
Right.
was nice. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a good excuse to never get my sternum tattooed because I'm so hairy there. I don't think that
You-
once it grew back, you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So,
You'd have to shave every day.
yeah.
you
Twice
gotta get
a
it
day.
lasered off beforehand.
That's true. I could
yeah.
do that. That's
You can't laser hair off after a tattoo.
Although I would like
Ah,
to see, I would
good
like
point.
to see Rodney shave your chest. We'd have to set up another session for that.
We can do that today.
Bring in the lawnmower.
Yeah.
You've got very gentle hands, Rodney.
Yeah, gotta know when to do that.
Yeah. What's the longest session you've sat through?
To get tattooed or do?
To sit through one.
Probably 9 hours.
Ooh.
I've sat for like that 8 or 9 hour range a few times. Most of those times were when I was younger and full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
But I did get a 8.5 hour session about 2 years ago on my shoulder, like the ball of my shoulder, and it was pretty awful.
Do you get? It's only happened to me once. It's when I got my sternum done. Like I was like shaky, and felt like I had a fever. You ever had that?
During or after?
After.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. It's just an endorphin dump. Your body's telling you that it's done.
Yeah.
The chemical exchange that your body goes through on its own is pretty wild.
Maybe that's what I chase though.
Dude, it's a big thing. Like there's a lot of times where we'll get people that are in recovery.
Yeah.
Or that are recovering, like anybody that's in recovery will always consider themselves recovering.
Yeah.
It's part of the pathos, like that's the way you deal with it daily, is to admit that you're a work in progress.
Well, Jason and I are both in recovery, so
there you go.
We
but
know that could be
it's a thing where a lot of people they've like find tattooing to be a nice replacement for going and getting loaded for years.
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, I got all these natural chemicals that you can unleash some of them by like going for a good long run or
eating
a
spicy
good
food.
workout or spicy food or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you get tattooed and your body just dumps all these chemicals that you can't get any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's some way. Participate in a Saw movie or something.
Right.
No, I've noticed
adrenaline rush, but it's a lot of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I've felt whenever I've gotten tattooed, like it is a euphoric feeling in spite of the pain, which is I think probably part of the reason why I'm attracted to the process of it.
Yeah.
But I've never had my sternum tattooed, so maybe I haven't. That's like the ayahuasca trip version, right?
Yeah, I tattooed.
It's like eating peyote.
I tattooed one of my buddies' ribs, Kevin Kennedy. You might know Kevin. And I had this painting on the wall, and he swore that painting was moving while he was getting tattooed. He's like, man, this is like an acid trip. I've got these hallucinogenic like tracers going on while I'm looking at this painting over here. And he was like, this is wild.
Yeah, that's what happened to me too when I was getting this done. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like I felt like the walls were like breathing and it was fucked up.
No extra charge.
I actually like this.
Yeah, it's a wild way to go through my daily, like I've been doing this more of my life than I haven't. I started the week that I turned 24. I'm 51 now. Or I started in a shop the week that I turned 24.
Wow.
And so 27 plus in the game.
Wow.
And a year before that of like fucking around in my house.
Are tattoo magazines still a thing?
You can still get them, but they're few and far between, and it's really sad that they're gone. Like it's one of the biggest detriments in what made tattooing what it was in the era that I was in it to begin with versus now. And it has to do with how things, like with magazines, you had a curator. Which is, like kind of shitty in the way of it was hard for some people to get a voice because they didn't know the curator. Now for me, the way to get to know the curator is to respectfully go to tattoo conventions, participate, in said tattoo conventions,
right.
shake some hands,
Right.
get your clients in the contest, get tattooed at the conventions, be a part of the community, and then you meet these people, you show your work to the photographers, the photographer takes pictures of it, they take it to the magazine, or you could just mail your stuff into the magazine, you know?
Right.
But it required some physical involvement.
Yeah.
And people that were the curators were like, you know, they could be partisan about things, you know, like they might not think that your work was good and they might leave it out, or they might not like you and they might leave it out. So there was like kind of this awful side of that, you know, some shy person that didn't want to go and stick their hand out or didn't want to go to the convention might miss out on the obvious way that I got into the magazine world. But now, like with thanks to all the social media stuff, I could be filming this live right now and it could just be on the internet while it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
Whereas the magazine days might do a back piece might take you months and months. Hell, maybe it takes you 2 years. You finish the back piece, then you send it out, send pictures to a magazine, then it takes 6 months for it to show up in a magazine. So your initial concept might take 2.5 years to actually show up in front of me
Sure.
on the stands.
Right.
And then I got to be willing to go buy it from the stands and spend $6 on it or whatever and take it home and then read it.
Right.
Now, you just have this thing like, bing, so-and-so's live on Instagram
Right,
now.
right.
They're doing a back piece. And so you see it as it's happening.
Right.
So crazy.
And so the curator is gone, which means the quality content is questionable.
Okay.
Because anybody can put it there. It's a democracy, which is cool. But it puts us with the fatigue of having to put up with so much horse shit that, you know, it's hard to even find the good stuff. The people that are established are like, I don't need any new clients. I'm not going to do a TikTok dance to show you my tattoos. And I don't want to put my tattoos up there. Like I've been doing this shit for 30 years. I don't want to put something out and get 87 likes and feel bad about myself because some other knob end that's been tattooing for 2 months has now got like, you know, 300,000 followers because of whatever reason, because they know how to work the system.
Right.
And so it puts this lopsided thing where if you know, you know. And if you don't know, you don't know with certain artists.
Okay.
And, you know, then the clients get skewed and they're convinced that somebody's good because they're popular, just far from the truth.
Yeah.
And, but the beauty of all that is if you've got the confidence to not fall for it,
Yeah.
you know, then you can just put it up there. If you got the confidence to put something up there and be okay with it not having the most likes or getting neglected or even have someone say something bad about you, be like, oh, your tattoos aren't as good as they used to be or whatever it may be.
Well, it's so subjective too. That's the thing.
Yeah. So for me, like tattooing, it offers all of those things. If I want the big applause, I can go the cheap route and I can get the big applause.
Yeah.
If I want my target audience to be my heroes, I can get the word to them and I can get that positive reinforcement by making sure the same way that I did in the 90s of going to a convention and putting my hand out and saying, hello, nice to meet you. I'm a fan of your work. I can do that in person still. You know, I don't have to rely on the social media aspects of life. And I can still have those one-on-one relationships with people and feel good about the work that I have to put out. And you know, it's very encouraging to have both avenues. And I look at them, you know, increasingly, like for my sanity, I've tried to find the good in the downsides of them, the things that people complain about.
Okay.
I try to find where the positives are, you know, like with all the newbie tattooers that are in it, that are doing it ways that I don't agree with. They're tattooing clients that want their product, and I don't want to do that product. So it's no different than it was without them, either one being involved in it.
Right.
Neither one of them were going to be in my chair anyway.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
going to get tattooed by that person. That person wasn't going to get tattooed by me.
Yeah.
They are in their own microcosm and they don't fuck with mine.
Yeah.
I'm great with it,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Like more
This is good.
tattoos out in the public means it's more acceptable for you to walk into a store and not be glared at.
Yeah.
Walk into any facility, you know,
Yeah.
whether it be the feared courtroom or
Right.
the you know, the award ceremony
Right.
where you're getting appreciated for whatever you are
That was
doing.
my dad's advice to me. Like when I started getting tattoos, he was like, "I don't care what you get, just make sure you can hide it from the judge." And I was like, "What?" I didn't do that. But,
Yeah.
Dude, I remember a friend of mine. It wasn't involving tattoos. I don't even remember what it was, but I whenever I think of this statement, I always think of it in his voice. And a friend of mine named Mike from back home is talking about something benign, but he's like, "You low expectation having motherfucker, like get with the program, do some shit for the right reasons, you
Right.
know, like stop thinking of the worst possible fucking excuse to
Right.
not to.
To not
Like,
get-
what if you
Yeah.
go to court? Well,
Yeah.
what if you fucking don't do anything to go to court for?
Yeah,
You're
that's a
good
fucking
point.
denying yourself a pretty cool life along
Yeah.
the way. You low expectation having motherfucker.
Start in the
good
right
point.
place.
Yeah. So as far as like conventions, you know, so it sounds like maybe the purpose they served at one point was, I mean, it's networking obviously, but also potentially getting into some of those tattoo magazines as well. Is that now going with that not being as prevalent, like for new tattooers or for people like yourself who've been in the game for a long time? What drives you to continue doing the conventions? Like, what is is it help in terms of like your career as a tattoo artist, or is it just for you like an opportunity to go and, you know, rub shoulders with these other people whose work you respect?
I had a guy that I looked up to named Cap Sumsky. He's since passed away. He's a fantastic tattooer down in Atlanta. And Cap, I hadn't seen him on the scene in a while. And he was out at a show, and I was like, "Damn, Cap, I hadn't seen you in like a year or so. How you been? Like, why hadn't you been out at the conventions?" Because I used to see him at all the conventions. He's like, "Well, the reason you work conventions is so that you don't have to work conventions, so that you can work at home."
Right.
And that struck me. That's been 20 years ago that he told me that. And it is kind of the case, you know, you go out, you get your name out, and back then, you know, you wanted to get into magazines. You get into magazines, and then you're exotic. You're not home, you're not available. It makes you exotic. It's like, oh, wow, man, he's in the magazine. I want to get tattooed by that guy. So it really served a purpose back home, even though they could find me by, you know, looking at the end of the bar at the Penguin or wherever, you
Right,
know, like,
right.
where is he? He's over there having a fucking cheeseburger
Right.
and a high life. So that turned into like, oh man, he can't tattoo you right now. He's in Virginia, he's in California, he's in wherever. So we kind of made ourselves desirable by being unavailable.
I see. Yeah.
And like we were talking about, like you get into magazines or whatever, and then again, like this adds to the exotic quality of the artist. Well, you know, now you can still do that. The tattoo conventions aren't as lucrative as they used to be because there's way too many conventions. You know, when I started, there was probably 20, maybe 30 worldwide.
Wow. Okay.
There will be 8 in a weekend sometimes now.
Wow.
And so it's massively changed. It's like, you know, like anywhere in this city, you want a place to go get a cheeseburger in this neighborhood, there's a few of them.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah.
used to not be.
Yeah.
So the availability of all of it has drastically changed. But again, the amount of people that want to get tattooed and the amount of artists have also changed. So it's just kind of a sliding scale. But certainly the desire for me is the inspiration of being around like-minded people. You know, I don't want to be stagnant. I want to be inspired by different people in different circumstances. I want to go to museums. I want to go to see, you know, the building blocks of what made anything happen, not just tattooing. You know, I travel and see music a lot when I go and travel for conventions. I usually try to stick around somewhere and at least spend a day in the town or some town along the way, or maybe work a guest spot. Like I've been going out to the West Coast working a good bit over the last couple of years, going to LA, went to Portland a few times. Just I've got people that are their work style isn't necessarily what I'm chasing. It's not like, hey man, I want to learn to paint or tattoo like these people. It's not about that. It's about work ethic and just attitude that they have that I enjoy, and it just puts me with a fresh mind. And when I come home, I hope that people see some energy that I have, some pep in my step that I have when I come home.
Yeah.
And that may come from me going to a Japanese bookstore and getting some new reference that I didn't have before. It may come from me going and seeing an art exhibit in a town that has something that I don't have here. It may be from watching some colleagues paint or going and painting with some colleagues. Like whatever it is, like I'm trying to I'm lucky that my hobbies are involved with my work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because when I go to do my thing that makes me excited, it's all stuff that's a part of my work world. Other than seeing live music, like I'm going to museums, I'm going to art shows, I'm going to bookstores, I'm going to see natural things, whatever that may be, like exhibits and landscapes and whatever that's happening. And I come home and I'm inspired by it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Take advantage of what's in front of you.
Yeah, and whatever it takes to be inspired, like other people are not going to be inspired by the same thing. Somebody else may, like I'm getting ready to go to Tokyo and I can't wait to go and see the sights and take pictures of the landscape and go to the bookstores and eat the food and maybe I'll get to see some music. I don't know about that.
So when you go there, do you have to set up appointments or people already?
I'll be at a convention, so if somebody reaches out to me, like my name's on their website, so if somebody reaches out to me, they can definitely book ahead of time. But I don't have a congregation waiting for me out there. I've been there once. It's been 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. I did a couple of tattoos at a convention. Oddly enough, I found a picture of one of them in a Japanese magazine like years later.
Wow.
And it's like, well, I made the funny pages. That's pretty cool. But nobody's holding on to that magazine waiting for me to show up. Mm-hmm. But back to the magazine tip, somebody could potentially have that magazine still, whereas if it were just on social media, they scrolled past it and then there was 25 more things in the next 35 seconds that they scrolled past.
That's true.
And even if they bookmarked it, they didn't go back to it.
No.
Even if they screenshot it, it's lost in the other screenshots of dumb memes and fucking grocery lists and shit.
That's a good point.
Magazines meant something and they were a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, circling it back to music, the way we've done the show is we ask our guests to take a look at if there was a soundtrack to your life, what would be the cornerstones of that soundtrack, to pick a few songs. And so you sent us a list of 3 songs. Mm-hmm. When you think of these songs, are they in a chronological order for you? Or is it just kind of...
Okay, so you asked for 3 songs and you wanted them to be things that were integral to the soundtrack of my life.
It's impossible to do with 3.
But it's not. That. It's not for me with these 3 songs.
Okay.
And the reason I picked them is they're not, they are 3 songs that I could listen to endlessly. They're not the only 3 songs that I could listen to endlessly, but if I were to have a desert island soundtrack, they would be on it.
Okay.
And they are songs that led me, they aren't the songs that are necessarily, I think, the most epically written. They're not even necessarily my favorite songs from these bands. But at the time that they found me, they were integral in me growing into finding more music like it.
Okay.
So the first one that I put on the list was Motorhead Ace of Spades. I remember the first time that I saw this song. And I say saw this song because I saw a video of it on MTV.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a video of it. It was on The Young Ones, a show that was filmed in England. That aired between 82 and 84. And then they showed up on MTV, I think in 86 or 7.
Okay.
Came on Sunday nights. They only did 12 episodes of it over the course of the time. It was filmed for BBC. And it was a story of, 4 British college-age students that never really went to college, but it was 4 archetypes. There was a hippie, there was a beatnik, there was a punk rock / metalhead, and there was the American.
Right.
Yeah.
That was what he was considered in the list, and he just wanted to be an American.
The American,
He was
right.
bad at it, of course. They were
Right.
all bad at everything they did. But they had a musical segue in every show, and there was an episode called Bambi. And in Bambi, they were invited to participate in this college TV show that was hosted by a guy named Bambi. And the TV show was like a trivia show. So in the midst of them having their hijinks at their house, their flat, they're like, oh yeah, that reminds me, we got invited to be on Celebrity fucking Challenge, whatever. Like, oh shit, we got to go now. Cue Motorhead. And then Motorhead's playing in their kitchen, and then they run out the door and they get on the train. So while they're running down through the train to get over to this town, there's like these videos of them running, and then the videos of Lemmy and Eddie and Wurzel playing in the fucking playing in the kitchen. And it was the introduction. I mean, the song's like 2 minutes and some change.
Yeah.
And it's just the epitome of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like, they never claimed to be a metal band because they weren't. They never claimed to be a punk band because they weren't. They bridged the gap between the two.
Yeah.
Like, Lemmy's statement, like every time he walked on stage, was, "We are Motorhead. We make rock and roll." And it had this huge impact on me. It's probably the thing that made me want to, well, that and a couple of other significant bass players made me want to play a Rickenbacker, which is
bring it up. I was like, I know that's why you play a Rickenbacker.
Well, between him and Cliff Burton and Geddy Lee and Chris Squire, not that I listened to Chris Squire much at that time, but those guys were Rickenbacker dudes at their prime. Motorhead was, they were undefinable. Like, everybody from the metal side loved Motorhead. Everybody from the punk side loved Motorhead. You couldn't not, because there was an honesty to it. And they never had to do ballads. They never had to do anything like wear fucking outfits. Like,
they played their own game for sure.
One of the in like quintessential times of Motorhead, one of the more interesting escapes from their paradigm is the one album that they did with Robbo, which Robertson, that played with Thin Lizzy for 5 of their prime records, he came and played Motorhead on Another Perfect Day. The only album he was on that was like a studio album. He did a couple of live things with them. And he didn't fit in with the mix, mainly not because they didn't write great music together, but because, he's like showing up on stage in leg warmers and fucking tank tops and shit. And they're like, nah, dog, you're trying too hard, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you like? This ain't working. And it didn't work. It wasn't the honesty. It was like,
Right.
Man, just nah. And like just the simplicity of what they were doing the power of the songs, the sense of getting in and getting out, like making the record happen the way it did. No apologies, no
Yeah.
need to apologize, really.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
because it was honest from the gate.
We used to see Lemmy at the Rainbow in
Mm-hmm.
LA.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so I think he was outside, and I went up to him, or not. I didn't go up to him. I asked the bartender because he was kind of turned. He was playing his little video game thing, the little thing they have on the bar, on the corner of the bar. And I was like, "That's Lemmy, right?" And she was like, "Yeah, but don't go talk to him. He wants to be left alone." I was like, "Okay, I'll leave him alone."
Yeah.
But he was supposed to be like the dopest guy, and
I had a similar experience. It's probably 2008, I'd imagine.
they tell you not to
And-
go talk to him.
And he was at the end of the bar, on the
Yeah.
outside bar.
Yep.
And there was some fucking bloke there in between me and him, and it was probably like a Monday or Tuesday.
Could have been
And,
any day.
And the first time I saw him was 91. I saw him on Operation Rock and Roll down in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Judas Priest, Metal Church, Judas, Alice Cooper. But all we saw were Alice Cooper and Motorhead. My sister was the only one old enough to drink at the time. She got wasted. And we ended up having to carry her out after Alice Cooper. But my sister's roommate at the time, this girl named Winter, she disappeared during Motorhead. We were like out on the lawn,
Yeah.
And I was 18 years old. We're out on the lawn, just graduated college, and or graduated high school, sorry. And first time ever going to a big show like this. Motorhead's playing, still daylight outside. Winter disappears, and then she comes back after the show, and she doesn't have a shirt on. And she's just wearing this black bra, and we're like, what the fuck's going on with you, Winter? I had just met Winter at this point, too. And she goes, oh, I went upstage. You want to know how to get upstage? Come on with me. And she got up to the front of the stage and took her shirt off and threw it at the band. So they invited her back into the band.
That's all it
And then when
takes.
she got back in the van, and they were like, all right, time for blowjobs. And she was like, no, it's not. And they're like, okay, bye. And they fucking booted her off the fucking van, right?
Can I have my shirt back?
But she knew how to get up front. So
She
me
found
and
the trick.
Josh, the guy that ended up getting the tattoo with me, or the first tattoo from me, he and I were together at this moment. We're there, and she's like, "Come on this way." So we literally just climb over the back of every step, or like every seat from the back of Lakewood Amphitheater. Just climb over the back seat. She's got her, she didn't have her tits out, but she's got her bra on, and everybody's just like, oh, okay, come on this way. And we walk all the way up to the front stage. Alice Cooper's playing. Walk all the way up to the front stage. We get right in front of Alice Cooper. I look up, and he's having this like Hamlet moment where he's got this stage prop skull, and he's holding it up, and he's like singing to it, and he pulls it up and kisses it. And about that time, this bouncer picks me up and plucks me out of the fucking thing and walks me away. So like that was like first time I saw Alice Cooper, first time I saw Motorhead, and it was just like, all right. And then my sister started puking all over the place, so we left. But yeah, so having seen him, several times from then, I wanted to meet him so bad.
Well,
And
take your shirt off.
I pulled my tits right out. So I get this I get over to him, and there's like this one guy's the gauntlet between me and him, and I was like kind of bouncing around, I was like, so, man, I've never had a chance to be around Lemmy before. Like, is he cool meeting people? Like, that video hadn't come out yet. Yeah, the autobiography or the biography about him, the biop. Hadn't come out, and I didn't know if he was receptive of meeting people or not. And the guy turns around, looks over his shoulder, and looks back at me and goes, looks a bit busy, doesn't he? I'm like, all right. Yeah, I guess he does.
That's pretty much.
And I turned around, and I walked back over to the door to walk back inside. And I got to the door, and I thought about it for a second. I thought, one of the two of us are going to remember this night. And it ain't going to be a man that was born in fucking England.
Yeah.
And I turned back around and I pushed that dude out of the way and I went over and fucking talked to Lemmy.
Nice.
And I was like, hey man, I just wanted to shake your hand and tell you thank you for all you fucking given me. You've been very important in my life, and I wanted to thank you for all the music. And he was like, cheers, mate. And we fucking toasted glasses. I didn't ask for a photo or anything. Just told him thank you and fucking moved on.
Nice.
But I got my moment, you know?
Hell yeah. The name Motorhead came from because he was
he wanted to be called Bastard.
Okay.
He wanted, like, when he got out of Hawkwind, he wanted to start a band called Bastard, and they were like, no, we're not going to give you money for a band called Bastard.
Okay. See, I thought it had something to do with like his, because he liked using uppers and like.
Oh yeah. That's how they ended up on Motorhead.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely how they ended up on Motorhead.
Was
because
it
was about the uppers. They are Motorheads.
Jeez.
Oddly enough, though some people probably wouldn't believe it, I've never done drugs. I was always a boozer. I never got into uppers or downers or snorting or smoking.
It's a smart move.
Not never got into it. Never did it.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that like a conscious effort ahead of time?
Apparently.
Like you just decided, like, I don't want to fuck with that. Was there anything that happened in your life that made you, like, a bad example or something that was set?
Everybody was a bad
Everybody.
example.
What I mean,
look, he's looking at two of them. So
I didn't know if there was one thing.
Honestly, like when I was really young, I wasn't around hard drugs.
Yeah.
It was, I had a lot of friends that smoked weed and maybe did acid or whatever like that. So I just, was kind of insulated from it.
Yeah.
But I just was like, dude, I'm good. I'm good over here. I got a beer. I got a shot or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it was never really a thing. I mean, I'm sure I missed out on some social opportunities as a result.
Well.
But I didn't miss out on, like having to decide to stop on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, the legal repercussions or the physical repercussions or whatever. So yeah, dodged some dark times. I had enough dark times from drinking, that's enough of a demon. Mm-hmm. I stopped that about 4 years ago.
Hindsight's always 20/20, I guess, but like, I wish I had more foresight like you had.
I mean, maybe because maybe I was being cowardly about it. I didn't have a need for it. I was a creative person. I didn't need the crutch of feeling like I couldn't be creative without some kind of boost.
Right.
But even like being enamored by somebody like Lemmy, his whole fucking being was based around uppers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go.
And I drink decaf for fuck's sake. I'm like,
really?
I don't need uppers.
Yeah. Do you really drink decaf?
All damn day long.
What?
Yeah.
So you just enjoy coffee, not the.
You just like the flavor of
I
coffee?
just like the flavor
or is it just
of
habitual?
shitty coffee? Mm-hmm. It's not even good coffee. There's no good decaf. It's just like fucking hot water with some dirt in it.
Yeah. I've cut back on coffee too, actually. I only do it a couple times a week now. Yeah.
Every morning. That's
I get caffeine headaches.
My favorite time of every day is my first sip of
That's
coffee.
because it makes you shit.
Well, that's like 15, 20 minutes after I finish it. Yeah, but
All right, bud.
My man.
let's see
What
it.
you think?
Love it.
One down.
Yeah, dude.
Love it.
All right, folks, if you like what you've been listening to today on For the Birds Vodcast, be sure to head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/For the Birds Vodcast.
Bing bong.
Bing bong. Show some support. So what was the second song on your list here? We went
So second song, Thin Lizzy, Boys
Very
Are
cool.
Back in Town.
Yes.
Now, I did try to keep these songs with songs that were available to me in, a starved cultural area of, Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
We had a record store, we had a Manifest, and it was a fantastic record store at the time. Like when I first started going there, it was barely bigger than this room we're sitting in.
Wow.
Where you got your records, you got exposed to the cool stuff, but then you also, you'd see somebody that you went to school with, or you'd see somebody from a neighboring school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those situations where you kind of eyeball somebody and you're like, oh, they're wearing a shirt that's got the band on it. Like,
Right.
What does that mean? Like you talking about seeing me and like, this guy likes cake. What the fuck? I didn't expect that.
Right.
Yeah.
Eyeball.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that kind of thing, and the record store was great for that. Now, Thin Lizzy was not something that I bought a record for early on at all, but I knew the song from listening to classic rock radio stations, which at that time wasn't classic at all. It was,
Right.
It was just rock.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't the newest stuff all the time, but it was what I was exposed to, like they weren't pushing the boundaries, but Thin Lizzy was certainly in there, and that
Yeah.
song was like this powerhouse. It was this, it was this tale, and I didn't know that it was part of a concept record at the time. I didn't realize.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
didn't
like,
either.
like Jailbreak is a concept record. Technically, it's a story from start to finish.
Oh, okay.
If you read the back of the record, it tells you like, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was what they were going for, was telling a tale.
Okay.
So it had this kind of narrative feel for it, and you kind of get in the mix. You can picture the places, you can picture the people, and then those fucking layered guitars, man.
Yes.
Robbo, which I was talking about earlier with fucking Motorhead, he was that was him and Scott Gorham at that time, and they were just crushing it.
Yeah.
And like they were in one of their heights as far as like that. I think they put out 2 albums that year. But again, I didn't know this stuff at the beginning. That was just the segue.
Right.
But that gave me the avenue to be a little more hyper aware of it. I think it was like reading some Henry Rollins book years later, like in the early 90s, where he was talking about how much he loved that particular record, that I actually went and bought the full record and then got, just overwhelmed by the power of like just the whole record as a record.
Yeah.
Like I came from a generation where we bought records
Oh, yeah.
and then we
It was an
listened to
experience. Yeah.
one side at a time. Like
Yep.
the first thing I did when I got a record was record it onto a cassette so that I could listen to it in a car somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at home it was the record, and outside it was the car.
cassette, yeah.
Like it was a
Yeah.
a cassette somewhere, or trade it with somebody else.
Yeah.
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 And man, it just had such a narrative throughout the whole thing. It was like watching a movie, or it was just like a different thing. So there was like this storytelling element to it
Yeah.
that had a specific power for me.
Yeah. And
What do you think about this?
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect, man.
Cool.
But this is like one of the best like open road driving songs ever. As soon as the what is it, the melody, the
Yeah.
had much to say. But man, I still think them cats are crazy. They were asking if you were around, how you was, where you could be found. I told them you were living downtown, driving all the old men crazy. The boys are back in town, the boys are back in town. I said, the boys are back in town, the boys are back in town. The boys are back in town, the boys are back in town, the boys are back in town.
They're an Irish band, right? So those
Yeah.
guys, so from Dublin. So I always felt like there was a bit. They were like the storytelling aspect of their music was kind of like in the Springsteen vein, but with a harder edge.
If you listen to their very first record, it's before they had an identity, and you can feel all the building blocks. Of
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that's when they were listening to Van Morrison. That's when they were listening to Hendrix.
Right.
That and you can put all the building blocks
Yeah.
together in that very first
Yeah.
record.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
they're so like independently there,
Right.
and then by the second record, it's like, oh wait, we got to start pulling these together into singular
Right.
songs. They've got to be unified.
Right. Right.
And then they hit
the
their
sound
stride.
was found.
How
Yeah.
many albums did they do?
I don't think they had a
Seven
lot.
or
They
eight.
didn't do that many.
I mean, they were
did
they were a band till the early '80s, I think. Right?
Oh, okay.
83.
Yeah. So, yeah. Like,
83, died in 86.
Oh man. Right.
They had quite a few lineup changes, but it was always Gorham on guitar and Robertson on drums.
Right.
It's hard to pioneer anymore. Like you can be a pioneer compared to your friends, your
Right.
colleagues. Like I'm getting out of this town. I'm going to check it out in another country. Or I'm going to
Right.
check out the other coast. Or I'm going north. Or going further south. Or whatever it is.
Right.
Like that's pioneering now. Like,
Right. But
I'm gonna try some different vegetables today.
right. Right.
You ever eat this fruit?
Right.
Like that's about as experimental as anybody can get anymore. It seems like
Yeah.
unless you're going into the recesses of some jungle to some indigenous culture that's doing something that you've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Which guess what? That's not fucking happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's,
like the options for like Led Zeppelin or the Beatles to go and hit the Eastern cultures and get a sitar and change the landscape of
Right.
music that's long gone.
Right.
That was
We've
like
done-
60
it's all been done.
fucking years
Right,
ago now.
yeah.
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 Everything's been done. I mean, in one way or the other, it's been done.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it feels unfortunate to me because I am a lover of organic music made with instruments with people's hands, and but the only new territory is electronic, and that isn't even new territory anymore. Now it's like
Right.
artificial, like AI
Yeah,
music
yeah.
or something. It's like what we can manipulate with our hands and our bodies musically, with art in general. I feel like we've exhausted all territory. Not that there aren't new, not that we can't continue to be inspired, but we can't pioneer necessarily in the same way. I mean, and if there is some way,
Like,
It's
what are the bands
lost
that
on
you've
me.
heard in the past 10 years that you're like, this is totally new, totally
Nobody.
different?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Because I think nostalgia is the thing that we're turned on by now when we hear music, right? It's music that makes us
absolutely.
feel something that we've already felt a long time ago.
And
Yeah.
and the nostalgia can even be a look. We're as
Yes.
frail as that in our scruples on this shit. It's like, well, here's a band that they look like Led
Right.
Zeppelin, or
Right.
they look like fucking whatever.
Was it Greta Van Fleet?
Greta Van Fleet, it's
Yeah.
like
They sound like Zeppelin,
they
too. though,
sound
but-
exactly like Led Zeppelin, with not as good, obviously, but it's like the appeal with that is, oh my God, I haven't heard this done like this in so long.
Right.
It's nostalgic.
Yeah.
And for somebody who's younger, who maybe wasn't turned on to Led Zeppelin first, bands like that, I mean, the music, we've heard it. Like, even if you don't know
yeah.
it was Led Zeppelin, like you've heard it. It's been in the atmosphere somehow, some way in your lifetime. And without realizing it, it calls upon some kind of memory or some kind of emotional heartstring is tugged on,
Yeah.
It's always been what I've gravitated towards in music, but it's what I've gravitated towards in art. The tattooers that I follow, the painters that I follow, the photographers that I give a shit about, you know, it's because they've had their vibe. You know, they certainly look up to their heroes and pay homage to them in their own way. Whether their heroes be something out of pop culture, or whether it be something out of, you know, other cultures, or whether it just be, you know, here's my vibe and I'm sticking to it, and I'm gonna do it despite the fact this is not the popular thing.
Right.
And I've always found myself there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's like at this point, maybe it's not about pioneering as much as it's about just maintaining artistic integrity, right? I mean,
Yeah,
is that
yeah. I
essentially?
mean,
Yeah.
like providing, you know, as a tattooer, I came from a period where we were doing whatever walked in, you know, like people came in off the street, they wanted to get tattooed, and there were 40 more people behind them, and we had to get it. Like that building that we were talking about earlier in Gastonia, when, you know, on a Friday or a Saturday, we'd have, you know, 30 to 50 people getting tattooed that day.
Wow.
I was doing 10 to 15 a day on
Wow.
a weekend. And I was doing about 45 tattoos a week.
Wow.
So, yeah, usually like 15 of them would be on like a Friday or Saturday.
Yeah.
And it was madness. And we didn't have time to really like spend a lot of time really hemming and hawing about it. We had to get in and get tattooed and get them out the door, because there were so many more people that were ready to get tattooed.
Right.
And the boss man, he wanted us to tattoo everybody. You know, he didn't want anybody left behind.
Yeah.
He didn't want them going to the shop down the street.
Right.
And we didn't want them to go to the shop down the street. So we did everything to be efficient and professional, but we also wanted to be efficient, you know, like, here you go, there it is.
Right.
You know, this
Just
is what you
moving
asked for.
through 'em.
Bam, get
Yep.
out.
Yep.
So if that thing was some writing, you did some writing. If you wanted a portrait, you did a portrait. You know, you wanted some tribal, you got tribal. Color, black, gray, didn't matter. Do it. Like the specialty bullshit didn't come out until TV shows came out. And it's like, oh man, what do you specialize in? Like, who fucking cares what you specialize in? Can
Right.
you do it all?
Right.
Because for me, I didn't have a library to go to for reference. I didn't have Google. I didn't have a place to buy equipment. I was going to hardware stores and buying things to make equipment with.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, if it was stuff that I needed, like for certain things, like we would have to go all over the place to makeshift things to work with.
Yeah.
You know, like I wasn't making my own tattoo machines that way, but I was coming up with ways to make needles that way. And you know, going blind doing it, staring at these little tiny ass needles.
Oh yeah, that
It's
ain't
not
fun.
fun. And people don't have to do that now. You
Right.
know, like that's a thing of the old days.
So what
I'm
do you?
glad I know how to do it. And when I took on an apprentice, I made him learn how to do it.
Right.
I didn't make him do it forever, but I made him learn how
Just
to do
so
it.
he understood the sort of where
Like
it
he
came
had
from.
he had done this for like a couple of nights, and he looked at me. He's like, "How often did you do this, and for how long?" I was like, "Oh, about 4 hours a week for about 12 years, maybe 15."
Jesus. Yeah.
Keep working,
Yeah,
kid.
probably about 12 years.
Yeah. So what do you think the kind of drawing parallels between music and tattooing? Do you think there's any pioneering left to be done in tattooing?
I'm sure there is. You know, but what's not pioneerable?
Right.
Like what they're trying to like upfit, it's the wrong shit. It's all for the consumer.
Right.
You know? Well, I can't say that. It's not all for the consumer, because there's certainly people trying to change the delivery system. Like, oh, I've got this, you know, rounder wheel of a tattoo machine. I've got
Okay.
this whatever. But in the end all be all, it's more about like, hey, check this out. Here's a numbing agent. Or hey, check this out. It doesn't make sound. Or hey, check this out. It says, you know, here's a healing product that says this on it. Here, like,
Okay.
what they haven't gotten anybody to do is learn that skin ages. You know?
Okay.
Skin ages no matter what the fuck you do. If you were to put If you were to write on a piece of paper and put it on the dash of your car, I guarantee in 30 days that thing sitting on the dash of your car, the ink would be light.
Mm-hmm.
It would be washed out. The color of paper would be changed if the paper was a color.
Right.
And that is what the sun does. It bleaches things. So you take your tattoo out, it's going to bleach it down.
Mm-hmm.
Your tattoo is aging in your skin as you age.
Mm-hmm.
Your skin is exfoliating every 28 days or so. It's flaking off. So you got to get that ink in the right spot. That ink has to be there, and it has to be done right, but it also has to be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And so people looking at pictures on their phone of what this thing looks like when it's at its peak after some artist has manipulated it with a bunch of Photoshop filters to make it look crispier than it actually looks in person.
Mm-hmm.
And they're convinced that that's new technology.
Right.
It's new artists. It's like listening to Greta Van Fleet with a drum track that's probably recorded over the course of 75 days with who knows how many different layovers.
Right.
Or listening to John Bonham with one microphone in the room.
Right.
With one cut.
Right.
Yep.
And the one thing they had to do was figure out how to get him to shut his mouth and stop making so much noise that it was louder than the drums.
Right.
That was the reality of that.
Yeah.
So the quality of the art versus the artist, it's not better artists.
Right.
How do you feel about people getting numbing agents or being put under for tattoos?
The under thing just cracks me up.
Isn't that weird?
At the complete unrealistic aspect of it. Ever since tattoos started, or anything, any dynamic thing in the world, a surgery, building a house, like building a car. If you tell somebody you tell somebody that you are recording bands, what's the most famous band you've done? What's the most?
Yeah.
What's
Right.
the loudest? What's the most extreme thing? Nobody cares about the middle ground. Nobody cares about the quality and the consistency of anything.
Right.
They want to know the most extreme thing you've done.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
That's true.
And so it's just built into the population. So you tell somebody like, oh, this ball player got sedated while they were doing their dentistry, and then they got a bodysuit out of it at the same time. Like, well, first of all, the realistic aspect of that is the insurance that has to be had to put somebody under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've had any surgery and you've been put under, it starts at hundreds and goes quickly to thousands.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And it's because of the insurance. It's not
Yeah.
because of the product. The
Right.
product is pennies. It's
Right.
because of the insurance in case you die.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
Or
yeah.
worse yet, you don't die and you're just a vegetable forever.
Right.
Neither of which are good.
Yeah.
So, that's why they have insurance. And that's why sedation is so bloody expensive.
Right.
So this person that's, a ball player, they're out of your pay grade. They are getting, they are supposedly getting tattooed, and then waking up with this tattoo. They still have to heal it.
Right.
Now, when you get a huge amount of tattoo work done, which I have gotten some pretty damn large tattoos done in my time, and I've done some larger tattoos than I've got, in a short amount of time. There's a huge amount of inflammation to your system, and your system has to heal it. Just because you got it all at once doesn't mean you're out of the ballpark.
Right.
You got a long road to hoe. I've known of a guy that sat for 5 days getting tattooed by Philip Liu, who was, hands down one of the finest tattooers on the planet. He's in Switzerland. This guy went out, got his whole front tattooed by him 5 days running.
Wow.
His body went into shock. He ended up in the hospital for like 8 days and in Switzerland.
Shit.
And he had to lie about what happened to him because he didn't want to throw Philip under the bus for being the one to do the work on him. Because he didn't want any red flags going up that this guy did something. And they're also going like, hey, we need to buckle down on the tattoo community. They're doing something that's dangerous. This guy's, you know, he's like got an infection now because
Right.
of essentially, like, when you're tattooing, it's not unlike having a 3rd-degree burn on your skin.
Right.
As far as like the openness to the tissue has to staph infection.
Okay.
So this guy essentially got a staph infection with all of this open tissue. All you got to do is just lean up against something some dirty person's touched.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So say you had something this size and somebody goes into a gym and they work out and they touch somebody's sweat that's been sitting on a piece of gym equipment for a week. You
Right.
know, like a big nasty piece of equipment that hadn't been washed in a while, and it's got nasty bacteria on it. Next thing, you got a staph infection and MRSA or something. Then you want to blame the tattooer. You
Right.
know? So somebody gets a back piece or a full leg sleeve or whatever they get while they're out, they've got a 3rd-degree burn essentially over whatever body part they've got,
Yeah.
and they've got to care for that.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to navigate that. Their body's in extreme recovery mode. Inflation plenty. I mean, I've got tattooed 3 times in a row before within the course of 30 hours.
Wow.
I got 2 tattoos on the back of my leg and then got my armpit and ribs done the following day. I was on a trip out at a convention. It was my birthday. And then after that, I was just like, my body was mad. Like I had like fever. It was not nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so somebody thinking like, that's so cool that I got sedated and I got a bodysuit, ain't that cool?
Yeah.
You
Right.
still got to heal it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it heals poorly, you got to get it tattooed again,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. That's a good point.
And so I'm not opposed to somebody using a numbing agent. I've had them used on me, not like that. I've never been put under for a tattoo. But the realistic aspect of it versus the shock value of it, you know, like when people find out I'm a tattooer and they don't know much about me, you know, they want to jump into clever conversation. They're like, "Have you ever tattooed anybody's eyeball? I saw it on TV where somebody got their eyeball tattooed." Like, no, I haven't. It does happen. It
I've
can
seen it,
happen,
yeah.
but you know, there are other ways to go blind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since we're close to being done, let's ask you about your last song before we wrap. The last song was what was the last song?
Middle of the road.
Middle of the Road, Pretenders. Yeah.
Pretenders. Again, now, 70s born band. That's kind of an English band too. I mean, she was spending her time at that point in England.
Yep.
And you know, her story is another pioneer story. You know, you got this female that was fish out of water.
Yep.
And you know, she was wrapped up in the punk rock community. She was dating Steve Jones for a little while from the Sex Pistols. That was a pretty weird thing when I learned about her connection with those guys, which I also learned about from that book I was talking about, that Punk Rock Diary book.
Yeah.
Like, she's all over it. And nobody thinks of Chrissie Hynde as a punk rock goddess or anything like
Right,
that.
yeah.
She's not. She's a rock and roller. But it's because she wrote good fucking songs. She wasn't singing about fuck the queen or,
Right.
you know, like, she wasn't trying to start a circle pit or have a breakdown and, you know,
Right.
like what people today might think of. That people weren't shredding skateboards and swimming pools while they were listening to this. And, you know, she was just somebody that was just making music because she needed to make it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, she was somebody that didn't have a whole lot of confidence in her own thing. And here Steve Jones was, you know, clearly pretty fucking popular as the Sex Pistols, but it was like this big hoorah about, you know, that Malcolm McLaren had put together about the band. And it was more style over substance. And Jones is looking at her like, you've got more substance than we've got style.
Right.
For fuck's sake, you got songs.
Yeah.
You can play this instrument. You
Yeah.
can fucking, these are brilliant. And, you know, she aligned herself with these people. She really came more like kind of from the new wave angle.
Yeah, I'd say.
And
yeah.
yet she wasn't.
Right.
She wasn't at all.
Right.
She was just a rocker,
Yeah.
you know? And she wrote really good songs. Like when I was first sending these songs, like I almost did Back on the Chain Gang, but Middle of the Road is the song that's more on me. Like when I hear that, like when I would hear that working in my dad's garage, you know, like tearing down a motor or something like that, and it would kick on and like fucking
Yeah.
you know, that drum line is just like, oh wait,
Yeah.
time to put some pep in the step.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then that guitar solo and the harmonica at the end, and just, you know, like it was all shredded down to This Is Us. Like their music video was them live on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't a concept video. It
Right.
wasn't like, you know, check me out.
Right.
Like, and check me out. I'm a woman. I've got,
Right.
you know, I've got womanly bits. Like she was wearing a fucking suit.
Right.
You know, she's very new wave looking
That's
as
true.
far as that.
Yeah.
And like, this is what we have. This is honest. This is like, I'm not trying to market my look. I'm trying to market this music.
The music,
It's fucking good.
Yep.
And not for nothing, all three of those songs, the bass lines are crucial.
Yeah.
They're fucking
Their,
crucial.
Their original bass player, I don't remember what his name is, Peter something, I think, but it's really cool bass playing, man. Like just a lot of movement, real melodic bass playing. Yeah.
Is that why you were drawn to playing bass?
I was drawn to playing bass because my best friend played guitar.
That's
Yeah.
kind of.
But it's interesting though, like the songs you picked. I think
That-
there's a high prevalence in
Well, this
obviously in
morning I
bass
was
playing.
listening to
Yeah.
all three of them. I was like, they all kind of line up.
Yeah.
Like it's the bass tones, the lines. They're all like essential.
Well, they
to
all
the
happened
song.
within 4 years of one another.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or 5 at the most.
Yeah.
And 5 critical years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Like East Coast, West Coast of the U.S., Britain. You know, like the music that was happening in these places was changing on such a rapid basis.
Yeah.
And what was acceptable and wasn't acceptable. It was pre MTV. You know, so it was not about the look yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It was an obvious choice for me.
Middle of the road, he's trying to find me. I'm standing in the middle of life with my pants behind me. I got a smile for everyone I meet. As long as you don't try dragging my bag or dropping the bomb on my street. Now, come on, baby, oh, get in the road. Oh, come on now. In the middle of the road, yeah.
Well, before we let you go, I ask everybody this: do you cry when you listen to music?
No, I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not often, though. I'm just trying to make myself feel better.
No, I definitely do.
Okay.
I mentioned my grandfather. I have one album that he did that's on vinyl. I have another album that he did that's on cassette that was probably 30 or 40 Christmas songs just done chromatically with guitars.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great fucking thing. But the other thing, it's all this it's all just instrumental. And it's mostly like kind of ragtime, kind of jazzy kind of stuff. But then he does a version of I Wish I Was 18 Again. I can't even talk about it
It gets
Yeah.
you going.
without it
Yeah.
just fucking making my eyes
See,
well
I
up.
do feel,
yeah.
I do feel better now.
It's it's a fucking real thing.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's a fucking great feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
It
it's,
is.
it's great to
It is.
emote.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
that's why we get tattoos
Yeah.
to prove that this shit's permanent, that
Yeah.
this shit's real.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know, like these pioneering musicians I've been talking about, these people that are willing to wear their thoughts on their sleeves or their hands or their necks or whatever. You know, there's an honesty in that. There's an honesty in that music that was made in the 70s and 80s
Yeah.
because video hadn't killed the radio yet.
Right.
And they were able to approach it from like, hey, I'm with some blokes that I want to make some racket with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't have things that we're gonna let stand in the way of us making music.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna do it. We might have a day job that we do to get to this point where we make music,
Yeah.
but we're gonna make it. Like we've got a live show coming up pretty soon. I've spent the last few nights painting a flyer for it.
Nice.
You know, and like it's a way for me to get a lot of different creative aspects of my life going.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
and it's all part of a creative process, and it's a thing that anchors it down for me time wise. You know, like a lot of people when we think about, you know, what have you been doing lately? Like, oh man, I hadn't been there since man, I love that place. I haven't been there since they did that thing. You're like, that was a year and a half ago. How much do you love that place? How much do you love that thing?
Yeah.
So when we lose sight of how distant time is, but when I have things like a flyer for a show or a new tattoo or traveling to a new city, you know, to go to a convention, you're asking like why I still do it.
Right.
When I can anchor down like these more heavy moments without like them having to think about a tragedy that happened, you know, then it wells up inside me more as to what kind of power a moment can have if you breathe it into it
Yeah.
instead of sucking it out of it.
It's like
yeah.
life
You know,
markers, setting life markers down.
I had a client that was obsessed with getting tattooed, but too much of a control freak to do it. Actually, he was never my client. I never tattooed him.
Yeah.
And he came up to me one time in the Penguin, and you know, back in those days,
Yeah.
and he's like, well, you know, always wanted to talk about tattoos, and he's like, I have a friend, and he's got a really cool way that he gets tattooed. Like he got tattooed, you know, like when he got married, and he got a tattoo for that, and then he had a kid, and he got tattooed for that, and his dad died, and he got a tattoo for that, and then when he got divorced, he got a tattoo, and you know, it's just like a really cool way of documenting his life. I was like, that's great, dude.
Yeah.
It is a very valid way of getting a tattoo. Like you're documenting what's going on.
Sure.
It's like, see this arm right here? This happened on a Wednesday in February in 1998. I drove to Maryland. I got tattooed. The night before, I know exactly where I stayed. I know the movie that I went to see to bide my time to get through the night. I know what I had for lunch in order to load up and have some calories. I remember conversations that we had. I remember my artist taking a break and eating some bagel crisps. I remember talking about his kid. I remember watching him march around the back of the room with a stencil getting ready to tattoo me. I remember asking him questions about what he was using and the inks that he was using. I remember getting in my car and thinking I'll drive as far as I can go before I fall asleep because I just got tattooed for 8 hours.
Yeah.
You know, I'm exhausted. I got an 8-hour drive home. I'll go as far as I can and I'll get a hotel somewhere. I stopped and I got some coffee and I got some, I think I got like some combos and some beef jerky. And 8 hours later, I was at home because I was so wired for sound. Like, dude, that was a Wednesday in February, 1998. You remember what you were doing that day?
Right. That's
Would
good.
I remember what I did that day? I'm going to remember getting married. I'm going to remember having a daughter. I'm going to remember when my dad dies. I'm going to remember getting a divorce.
Right.
I remember a Wednesday in 1998
Right.
in February because I decided what that day was going to be about. And it was about me getting this tattoo. So I didn't got to wait for life to happen to get
Yeah.
tattooed.
Right.
I don't have to wait for life to happen to write a song or to make a painting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to have an excuse. I can just do it.
Yeah.
And if I do it, then it's worth having. I've made it. I've manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And,
I love that approach, man.
And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So tattoos can be that way.
Yeah.
I agree.
I love that
And-
outlook.
And you guys doing this, it's going to anchor this moment differently.
Yeah.
You know, you'll remember something weird about it. You'll remember something about this room will stick with you. Some painting on the wall, some person that you saw while you were getting coffee.
Right.
Something different will be seriously contending for some space in your brain for the rest of your fucking life because you have a reminder on your
Yeah.
hand right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a beautiful thing of tattooing. It's one of the things that makes me stay in it, is because much like hearing a song and having it take you to a place, seeing a tattoo, it takes me to a place.
Yeah.
You know, every one of them.
Amen.